Hey everybody, the Bald Guy here with episode The Mini Issue. So I have a 2010 Mini Cooper S Clubman. For over a year, I have been getting random misfires in multiple cylinders and with no symptoms. I wasn't noticing any misfiring. It was just getting codes for misfire. Some of them were pending, most of them were pending codes, and some were actually stored where the check engine light would come on. A few months ago, my wife was driving the Mini and it just suddenly died on her, and she had to coast it to the shoulder, stopped, let it sit for a little while, and then she was able to start it back up with no problem and no codes. There were no codes whatsoever, pending or stored, which was super weird. And since then, it has done it a couple more times and with the same results. It would just die. Like, you almost didn't even realize that it had died. You're pushing on the gas, trying to go, and all of a sudden you're realizing you're pushing on the gas and you're slowing down. And nothing was happening except you were slowing down. So the engine would just cut out. There was no jerking, no like running out of gas symptoms or anything. It was just, it was driving, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. So after researching YouTube and the internet, I wasn't able to find anything. My friend Bobby researched it, and he found a forum where they mentioned a bad soldering job on the fuel pump relay on the interior fuse panel. But the relay is soldered. It's not just something you can pop off and put in a new one. It's actually soldered to the electrical board. So I wasn't too excited about this, but I figured why not try it and see if it worked. The symptoms seemed to match what I was having problems with, so I went ahead and did it, filmed the whole thing, and so this is that video. One thing that I do want to talk about is the fact that I did do this twice. One time was temporary, and then the second time was a permanent fix. So the temporary films are in here at some points, and you'll hear me talking about when I'm actually doing it, referring to another video, and so that's the confusion. So the battery's just located right here, and the line's broken. I'm just going to disconnect the negative. And tuck that away so it doesn't get make contact. So battery's disconnected. Now I can start working on the inside. Okay, so I just got these plastic trims from Harbor Freight, Pittsburgh. They seem to be pretty good. I've used them quite a bit, although one of them I have kind of broken, but I think it cost me $6 or so. Looks like that's just a pop off. Yeah. So you can see in there, just a little white clip. And they may or may not. This just pops up. Oh. Shoot. That was easy. But one thing you want to do before you start taking this apart is take pictures. Okay, so I got the battery disconnected again, and I'm going to get this actually fixed. So I need to take this off again and get it fixed the correct way. When I was putting this all back together, I did notice that my passenger side window
wasn't rolling up or down, and it wouldn't do the auto roll up or down when closing the door either. And that ended up being this connector was not connected all the way. 1mm. Oh, I just take all the fuses out and we'll go from there. Just remember, when you're taking the fuses out, take a picture. Okay, so now I just take all the fuses out. Make sure you take a picture first. I've already looked at all these, so I'm not worried about them. Sorry for the camera view. I'm doing this from my iPhone, so it's not real good. But you can see the indentation here. That's where where it comes together. Oops, don't go too far down. You just kind of pry this side out while pushing down a little bit. Oops. Okay. So, as you can see right there, and the little clip things, you can see right there, are directly with the indents. So there's 4 on the sides, 2 on the ends, 4 on here. So that is it. Now just pop it off. Hopefully, it's that simple. And remember that you got stuff on the other end that's gonna have to come out. So there we go. This is it. So these are all the relays, and I think it's this relay is the one that's supposedly the problem. If I see a problem, I'm going to have to cut those, pull it apart, and resolder. Okay, so I'm gonna cut this apart and look inside. All right, so let's try and cut this. So I just have little, not exactly sure what they're called, but from Harbor Freight. It's pretty easy to cut. It's a little nerve-wracking, that's for sure. Okay, so just make sure you're not just holding it from the top one. The plastic doesn't really hold very well. Since I'm working on this one, I'm gonna pop this out.
Squeeze it a little bit. I'm not cutting this, I'm just squeezing it together, and that one. So I'm gonna heat on those pliers. Again, from Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight has some good tools. Okay, moment of truth. Set that aside, and let's look at it. Bobby helped me do the soldering the correct way. He used a Radio Shack soldering iron that had a built-on sucker. He was touching the solder to it until it started to melt. Once it started to melt, he knew that it was hot enough to melt the solder on the board. He squeezed the bulb, put the soldering iron over the solder on the pin. Once the solder began melting, he released the bulb, which sucked up the melted solder. He did this numerous times until we were confident most of the solder was removed. We used TMI American solder and alpha metal hydroflow soldering flux to solder the pin on the relay and solder the two boards back together. He would dip the end of the solder into the flux, which would help the solder stick and melt. He then would heat up the pin and touch the solder to it. The solder would melt. He then would move the liquefied solder around and continued doing this until he was confident that there was a good connection between the contact points. Using the other soldering iron, he was able to melt the solder more evenly and made it look pretty. Soldering the boards back together was basically the same. Heat it up, melt the solder, and move it around until satisfied. Be careful if the solder that is holding the pins to the board melt, they will come out. We used a screwdriver to hold the pins in, and it was a lot easier having two people working on this than just one. Once I was happy with the connections, I put the cover back on and screwed it back together. Make sure you don't bend any of the pins as you put it back into the cover. Okay, so now we'll just put this back on.
in. And unfortunately I can't show you me putting all the fuses back in because I took a picture of how the fuses are. So the next view will be with all the fuses in. Put the fuses back in just like the picture you took, I hope. Okay, now we're gonna put it back in. So I double checked them with my photo that I took, made sure they were all correct and in there. So let's put it back in. And scoot it over. This time I'm gonna make sure all the connections are good. And something. Oh. There we go. It's probably easier the first time. Although I don't know, because I'd have to watch the video. Battery is still disconnected. Just snugging it. Really hope this works. So, you don't want to bend this, so just make sure you put them straight in. Click. Click. Double check connections. Okay. I'm gonna go take it for a test drive. Oh, I gotta hook up the battery first. Okay, got my sunglasses. Battery's hooked up. Let's see if it starts. And it starts. So that's a good sign, at least. And that was just an alert to let me know I need to set everything. Okay, so I got a bunch of these clips still in here, and you got these going every direction. So the best bet is to take all those clips out, clip them in here, and then just pop it back in. Sorry about the angle. It's what I gotta work with. Try and not break them. They just kind of pop in and out, so not too bad. Got all of them on there. I'm just gonna pop it on. Oops. Remember that this goes underneath that before putting it in up there. Okay. Just slide that back on. Good as new. Can't even tell anything happened. So hopefully this solved the problem, and hopefully this was helpful. I estimate it only took me about a half a day, and it was a pretty easy job. It actually took me longer to make this video than it did to do the project. So far, my wife and I have driven the Mini probably about approximately 600 miles, and we've had no trouble codes, no misfiring, no issues whatsoever, no dying,
And so I'm really optimistic that this was the problem. Before, I would get like maybe 60 miles before having a misfire code pop up. So I'm really optimistic that this is the solution. If it changes, I will update you. But so far, it looks like this fixed the Mini issue. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it was helpful. If not, please still subscribe and like, and maybe another video will help you out. But please subscribe and like, and I'm looking forward to making more videos. I have other projects in mind. It may or may not be related to my Mini. I know I'm going to be working on my Toyota Sequoia, changing out the rear axle bearings pretty soon. I don't know how long it's going to take to make that video. It's probably going to be a long time. If this did help, please leave a comment letting us know what symptoms your car was having, and let us know that it did help so other people can hopefully get help on their car also. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a blessed day. Until next time, the Bald Guy out.